Okay, I think we're rolling.
Mhm.
So, Grandpa, how we doing today?
I'm fine. Yeah, having a good day.
How have you been recently? Like just health-wise and because you had a little stretch there where you were a little challenged.
Uh, Up and down for the last 5 years. It's been a roller coaster.
What have the challenges been?
Multiple forms of cancer and other problems like the badly infected gallbladder, and then my hearing aids failed.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, it's one thing after another, but I feel pretty good right now.
Good. Okay. So, let's see. Do you think that going through all this health stuff has kind of uh, improved your uh, gratefulness for, being alive and kind of made you a little more um, fortunate? Or like, how do you?
I don't really know how to answer that, because at times I wondered, is it worth it to be alive and living this way and having all of these medical issues and going back and forth?
Hmm,
But the more I think about it, the more I realize that I never thought I'd live to be 90. I
yeah,
never thought I'd live to be 80.
yeah. Well, I mean, how old did your parents pass away?
Oh, goodness. Well, my mother was 84. My sister was 78. My father was lost Caesar. He was 49. That doesn't count.
Wow.
But throughout the family, yeah, the only one who lived even closer to my age was my aunt.
Hmm,
She died at 87, but my uncle, Jerry, he was in his early 60s. My uncle Jim was in the late 70s. Uh, not, let's see, his two sons, one died at 58 from brain cancer, which was misdiagnosed as depression. And his other son was about 62. So there's not long life in my family. On my father's side, on
right.
my mother's side, is different.
Hmm,
My other grandfather, her father, let's see, he lived to be 96 or 97, whereas my grandfather died in my father's father died in his 70s. So I'm just about older than any of them.
yeah. Wow. So okay, so you were born in 35?
Yeah.
You were okay. Can you kind of take me back to 1930s, 1940s or so? Like what did the world look like back then?
Well, the temptation to say, gee, it was a simpler world, it probably wasn't. We just thought it was.
Hmm.
But I think back to the old neighborhood, and I'm from Southie, of course. Everything was so self-contained. You had a city block, and a city block filled with three-decker houses. There probably were, I would say 50, 60 families on our block,
Wow.
easily,
Just on a
because of
block.
the three-story dwellings. There might have been more. So there were hundreds of people living in that one block, and that was a little neighborhood all by itself. We had the pharmacy in one corner, World War I American Legion post on the other corner. The far corner was a variety store, which was run by an immigrant, Paul Panpukian, and it was called Paul's Spa, not Paul's Variety. Across the street was a meat market. Across on the other side was a fish market. in a little tiny First National supermarket, which wasn't much bigger than this room. And then around the corner was the barber shop. A couple of blocks away was the church. And our grammar school was, maybe 3 blocks away. So everything was self-contained.
Mhm.
And if you actually had to leave the neighborhood to go, oh my goodness, down to Broadway in Southie, you took the trolley,
Mm.
or you could walk. It was only a 15-minute walk.
Mhm.
So everything was self-contained.
Wow. Yeah, so everything was in walking distance, everything
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah,
all next to
easy
each other.
walking distance, yeah.
Yeah, wow. So, what did you like to do for fun when you were younger?
Well, let's see. We liked to, play sandlot baseball,
Mhm.
so we could 2 blocks go down to the park and take over part of the park and play ball. Across the park, we were at the beach.
Mhm.
I mean, what's nicer for the summertime than the beach? In the, wintertime, of course, there was huge amounts, at least we thought, of snow, and the plows would pile it all on the on the, sidewalks, and we'd have these large mounds of snow, and so we tunnel through them, pop up here and there, and have snowball fights. And down, at the end of Marine, Park was an aquarium. You could always go down and visit the seals. And in the wintertime, there was an area right near it which froze over, so we had, ice skating virtually all winter. Well, there were many things. Of course, in the winter, we were going to school too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so then what was school like when you were younger?
Well, it was a parochial school, with nuns. Some of the nuns were happy to be there, others really weren't that happy teaching, but they were told they were gonna teach. So, it was kind of a mixed bag.
Mhm.
And, all the kids are all together, and we knew the kids from the various neighborhoods, and, I had a positive experience in grammar school, and when I look back, whatever little things you don't wanna remember, weren't bothersome, but I had a nice experience. I liked the nuns, and, we enjoyed ourselves.
Mhm. What were some of the subjects that you really enjoyed?
Subjects that I really enjoy. I would say, English and math. Well, whatever passed for math in those days. Grammar school, yeah.
What drew you towards English and math?
Hmm?
What drew you towards them? Like, what did you enjoy about them specifically?
Well, you kind of enjoy learning. Uh, what I didn't like when we were young is being lined up for the spelling bee. And then, you'd be given this word and asked to spell it, and this seems as though there's 50,000 people around waiting for you to make a mistake. You know? That's no fun. But I enjoyed, reading, and I enjoyed doing arithmetic problems, so they were kind of fun.
Mhm. Did I assume the love of math kinda carried over to your accounting days? Or did it? How did you get into accounting?
Accounting is very orderly if you're good at it.
Mhm.
Math and, uh, things like that are also ordinary. They have rules, and accounting has rules. Taxation has the tax code, rules. So if you have an orderly mind, you can be attracted to that kind of thing. If you're disorderly, that's the worst profession to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that, I would be in the other camp. I don't
Yeah,
know if I
yeah,
would
I don't think you'd want it. Yeah,
no. Now, going back to the childhood, so I know that one of your big loves is baseball,
yeah.
and you mentioned playing baseball with your friends and all that. How did you, cultivate the love for the Red Sox and, of course, the Boston Braves and all that?
Well, in our neighborhood, the only team worth talking about was the Braves. Red Sox, we didn't pay much attention to them. I don't know why we caught on to the Braves, but we just loved that team. Maybe because in those days they were struggling, and if they finished in 4th place, I mean, that was a major, achievement. I like Braves Field better than Fenway Park.
Really?
Yeah. Well, what I liked about it was the bleachers. The bleachers were small, maybe 3,000 at the very most, maybe 2,500. So the bleachers were referred to as the jury box, and the jury would make judgment on what was going on in the field, and we could be very vocal about it. And Tommy Holmes, the right fielder, would stroll over between innings and lean on the fence, and everybody would talk back and forth to him. You know, very intimate. You don't get that in a bigger ballpark.
No, because yeah, because everyone's so high up and there's so many
Yeah.
people and
I mean, in
I
Braves Field, in Fenway Park, there was an area where you actually were low enough so that you could converse.
mhm.
But of course, the guys were in the dugout, and you couldn't see them unless somebody popped out. And it was very difficult to have a conversation with pitchers and others who were mostly inebriated in those days. That's the God honest truth. Some of those guys would go out on the mound and they'd had a lot to drink and they didn't know where the ball was going. And which happened to be a good thing because the opposing batter couldn't dig in because he didn't know where the ball was going either.
Were there any specific pitchers who, had a little too much to drink, maybe a little notorious for their alcohol consumption?
Hard for me to remember. There's one I can picture, but I can't remember his name.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm blanking out on that. I'm sorry, it was too long ago.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you imagine alcohol in baseball, the only thing I can think of is the chicken and beer scandal with the Red Sox. And of course, that was in 2011, and that was in their clubhouse after games. That was not, or also during games, but that was not on the field. They weren't actual players in the game,
Well,
you know.
I had a client and friend for many years who one day was sitting in a row waiting to take his driver's test. And Mickey McDermott, who then was pitching for the Red Sox, was sitting next to him. So they got into a conversation. And McDermott invited my friend to hang out with the Red Sox. And for a while he did, but he said, I just couldn't take it. There was so much of this drinking. He went over to Johnny Pesky's house, and they had literally bathtub gin. They had the bathtub filled with gin. There were exceptions. Bobby Dorr and Ted Williams didn't touch alcohol.
Mhm. But for the most part, it was very prevalent.
Yeah, well, the problem was that Tom Yawkey for a while was an alcoholic until he got off the alcohol entirely. And if you pitched a good game, his present was to give you a bottle of whiskey, and they'd sit down and have a few drinks.
Yeah.
That was the atmosphere at the time.
Mhm. Wow. I it's just so hard for me to picture, and I'm sure it's, hard for a lot of people to picture that,
Well,
just it being so
Rudy
prevalent.
York was, lying in his hotel room one night smoking, which you don't do in bed,
Mm.
and he set fire to the bed. So he didn't get much sleep that night. Uh, he went 1 for 3 the next day.
Wow. He got a hit at least.
Huh?
He got a hit at least.
Yeah, he was very dependable for getting hits. That guy could hit.
What are your some of your favorite Red Sox memories from over the years, do you think?
Well, of course, everybody loved Ted Williams simply because you never knew what he was going to be able to do that particular day. Uh, I like Sammy White. He was a catcher, and I've forgotten why his career was cut short, but Mary and I discovered years later that he was ended up as a golf pro in Hawaii.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. We went to one of the islands, and I can't think of the name of it. Visited a golf club, among other things, and he was the pro there. Uh, my maybe not favorite, but uh, a really good player who isn't talked about very much was Jackie Jensen.
Mm.
Jackie Jensen played the outfield, right field. He was a former all-pro or all-star football player.
Mhm.
So he could do the flips. He would dive for a ball, catch it, flip, and get right up on his feet, and he had a very accurate arm.
Mm.
There was a TV program where outfielders competed for each other to see who had the best arm.
Mhm.
So you'd stand a certain distance from home plate and throw.
Mhm.
And then those who survived the first round would back up a little and throw. And then those who survived would back up a little more. At some point, you were probably 400 feet from home plate. And it's very difficult to throw a strike 400 feet from home plate.
Yeah.
Ended up with Willie Mays and Jackie Jensen. Now, Willie Mays was a great ball player. Jackie Jensen outthrew him.
Really?
Yeah.
How far did he throw it, do you know?
I don't know, but he outthrew Willie Mays. His career was cut short because he had a fear of flying. And once the Pacific coast opened up, the idea of going from place to place by train was at an end, and the ball clubs started to fly, and Jackie Jensen wouldn't fly.
Oh my god.
So his career was cut short
Be
because of this fear of
because
flying.
he didn't wanna fly.
Yeah,
Imagine giving up a baseball career because you don't like flying.
yeah.
I can't imagine that.
I can't imagine it either, but he had to.
Yeah.
At first, he tried with a friend to drive.
Mhm.
It didn't work out.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard doing the cross-country trip from Boston to California every other.
Yes, yes.
What was your, family like? What were your parents like, your sister?
Well, my father was a master and mate of fishing steamers. And in the 30s, before World War II, he was a fishing master. They tell you,
Yeah,
yeah,
please,
okay.
please, go
All right.
ahead.
And then World War II broke out. His routine was to go out to sea for 10 days, then he'd be back, spend a few days at home, and then go out again. And, for us, that was routine. I
Yeah.
mean, the typical father doesn't do that. He comes home every night.
Mhm.
My father wasn't home every night, but that was his life, and that was our life. And my mother, uh, in those days, was a housewife, and in those days, almost any mother with children was a housewife. You didn't work.
Mhm.
How the heck could you work? What would you do with kids?
Mhm.
When World War II broke out, everything changed. First thing that happened was the Germans sent U-boats to the Atlantic coast and started sinking freighters. Now, a U-boat is a submarine.
Mhm.
It's called a U-boat because of the German word for submarine, Unterseeboot, undersea boat. That's exactly what it was. And they started knocking off freighters. Navy didn't have any capability of stopping it. They had very few ships. They had spotter planes, but what good is a spotter plane if a ship isn't nearby? So they came up with the idea of retrofitting small vessels and also constructing small vessels to escort the freighters and to interdict and kill the submarines. So they started to do this and then discovered they had a problem. Whom are we going to find to skipper these boats? Have we don't have skippers, people who know the sea up and down the Atlantic coast. Oh, no problem. Just go to the fish pier and recruit the fishing captains. Fine. Navy went to the fish pier and started recruiting fish captains, only to realize that these men were all older.
Mm.
You don't become a fishing captain when you're in your 20s or even in your early 30s. And then if they could convince you to volunteer, you probably couldn't pass the physical.
Yeah, because you're too old.
You're too old.
Yeah.
My father was 42. He was in great shape and he could pass the physical, but he could never be drafted. He was too old.
Mhm.
But he was a naturalized citizen, a native of Newfoundland, very proud of his country. He volunteered. First decision he had to make was, would he go in as a commissioned officer or as a warrant officer? Well, you'd say, well, why wouldn't you go in as a commissioned officer? A warrant officer grade one's pay was $25 more than an ensign. You'll say, well, what's $25?
Mm.
You have to think back to 1942.
Right.
Our rent was $28.
A month.
So $25 would just about pay the rent.
Yeah.
And everybody knew that the war would be over in a year or two. Nobody thought 4 or 5 years. So why not go in as a warrant officer, get the extra $25? And you were an officer anyhow. What difference did it make? So that was his decision. The Navy then sent him to Woods Hole for training. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, and of course I'm not that old. I was only, what, 7? Why would they have to send my father to Woods Hole for training? He could train them, but he didn't know anything about submarine warfare.
Mm.
And we didn't know anything about these small boats attacking submarines. We didn't know what he was doing that, and he didn't tell anybody.
Mm.
I had to discover this many years later on an internet search.
Wow.
He died without telling us what he did during World War II. So he spent a year and a half, almost 2 years, going up and down the coast as what is referred to as officer in charge. So he would be the skipper of the naval vessel, and then in charge of whatever number of freighters were going up or down the coast, so that if the submarine appeared, he could take charge and direct them as to what they could do and then what his little boat could do. After the Germans pulled the U-boats back to Europe, he was then assigned to what the Navy referred to as a fleet tugboat. Well, you think of a tugboat as something maybe 50, maybe 60 feet long, crew of 5. This boat was 205 feet long and a crew of 75, including 5 officers. So it was not your typical tugboat. Though he, as the warrant officer, was the junior of the 5. And as the bosun, he was the deck officer. But on these smaller vessels, you wore several hats. So he was the deck officer, he was the towing officer, he was the commissary officer, and he was one of the 5 officers who pulled watch. They, after their shakedown, he met them during their shakedown cruise in Placentia Bay, Newfoundland,
Oh, really?
where he was born.
Yeah.
So he went back to his birthplace because of his Navy assignment.
Mhm.
And then they went to England and were somewhere right outside London waiting for D-Day.
Mhm.
Now, what's a 205-foot tugboat going to do on D-Day? There's 5,000 vessels. They were tiny little boat. This boat appeared at Omaha Beach on D-Day. Now, Omaha Beach is where we had all the problems. There were 15 howitzers, positioned on that beach and in bunkers, and all kinds of machine guns and everything. And we caught hell for 2 or 3 days on Omaha Beach, and at one point thought we'd have to withdraw. So what was this little boat doing? Their task was to keep the beachhead clear of disabled vessels so that we could continue landing forces. And so a little boat carrying 20, 30, 40 soldiers would be shot to pieces on that beachhead.
Mm.
My father's boat, the Pinto, would get as close as it could, and it had a narrow draft, so it would get fairly close. Then they'd launch a small boat, go in, attach a tow line, and tug it out of the way. They're doing this under enemy fire for 2 days.
2 days?
2 days, yeah.
Wow. Was there any slowdown at all during those 2 days, or was it just?
Well, it took 2 days before the beachhead could be secured.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough sledding for those soldiers. There is a movie called The Longest Day, and at one part of it portrays what they went through.
Mm.
D-Day +2, his boat was steaming behind a troop carrier. 1,800 soldiers and sailors aboard this large vessel. And among other things, the Germans had mined the area, floating mines. They have all kinds of things there. And the Susan B. Anthony, the troop carrier, hit one of those floating mines right in the rear. So my father's boat pulled up alongside to attach a tow line and tow it to safety. The captain of the Anthony soon realized that now this wasn't a towing operation. This would have to be a rescue. We're sinking.
Mm.
There were a couple of British destroyers nearby. they couldn't attach up to a, a big ship like that was sinking, but the little tugboat could. So they nudged up alongside, attached themselves to the Anthony, and the Anthony started loading or unloading 1,800 men onto the deck of a 205-foot tugboat. First came 45 wounded from what happened inside the Anthony. Those men were laid out on deck, and they were treated, but they weren't transferred. As the other men came down, other boats came alongside and took them off the Anthony, the Pinto. 2 hours later, it appeared that the Anthony had evacuated everyone. Captain and a small detail were still aboard. Captain told the few men who were still aboard, go and search the ship and make sure we haven't missed anybody. When they reported back to him that, yes, we haven't missed anybody, the ship is empty, he told them to get off. When he saw that they were safely on the deck of the Pinto, then he got off. He was the last man to leave the ship. The Pinto disengaged. 15 minutes later, the Susan B. Anthony was under the water.
Wow.
That's made the Book of Guinness World Records for the largest number of people who were safely evacuated from a sinking vessel without loss of life. There were 45 wounded, but no loss of life. So the entire 1,800 somehow miraculously were saved. Now you'll think, well, gee, the little tugboat that could really distinguish itself, it received a unit citation, which was rare in the Navy in those days. But no, it went to southern France and participated in the second landing, did the same thing, got as close as it could, and removed any landing craft which were disabled. Well, you think, okay, they've done all they could in the war. No, they were sent across to the Pacific.
Oh my gosh.
Through the Panama Canal. This part I don't think I've ever told you. A ship went through the Panama Canal in World War II. Physical exams were mandatory for the crew. So everybody had a physical exam. And it turned out that my father had a heart condition, and so they told him, you're going to be immediately discharged. He didn't want that. So he and the captain somehow changed the records. I don't know how they managed to do it. And a heart condition became high blood pressure. High blood pressure was treatable and you could stay in. My father said to the captain, if I'm going to die, I want to die with my boots on. Captain told us that years later. That's how I know, because my father never said anything. So they went across to the Pacific and participated in the invasion of one of the Solomon Islands. Did the same thing. So they ended up with 3 battle stars. So that was my father's naval experience. I mean, we knew nothing about it. When he was lost at sea aboard a fishing steamer in 1949, we knew nothing about what he had done in the war. He never talked about it.
Wow. So you found all this out after he passed away?
Yeah, years later, I was doing some internet research because the D-Day anniversary was coming up, and I had my father's naval officer's records jacket, and I started flipping through it and reading about this unit citation and about this and about that. I said, what the heck is going on? What did they do? So I was able to research the Susan B. Anthony and so on and discovered what had happened and pieced it together. I told my sister about it. She had no idea. My mother was dead by that time. But nothing was ever said in our house about that. And that's the way a lot of those guys were. They came home, they settled back into civilian life, and they said nothing.
Mm.
We didn't know he had a heart attack until years later, like a few years later, or heart condition. The captain called us. He was passing through Boston. He wanted to come by and say hi to my father. And my mother said, he's dead. She didn't say that he had lost at sea. First words out of the captain's mouth were, was it his heart?
Mm.
My mother said, what are you talking about? His heart. So then he told her the story. He hadn't even told his wife. As far as my mother knew, he had high blood pressure. And the reason why he'd have to sit up in bed in the morning and catch his breath before getting up was because he had high blood pressure, not because he had a heart condition. And he never told anybody down the fish pier.
Yeah.
Now, my Uncle Jerry, he was also a fisherman. He developed a heart condition when he was maybe 60. And the doctor told him, you can't go on the boats anymore and work. So Jerry stayed home for a while, and he was a bachelor, lived with my aunt, who was also unmarried. And it drove him crazy. Couldn't do anything. So one day he said to Addie, I'm going back on the boats, see what I can do. If I'm going to die, I want to die with my boots on. Said the same thing my father said. Went back to the boat, had a heart attack, and the galleon died. My Uncle Jim had 5 heart attacks before the last one did him in.
5?
5.
Oh my.
He was a tough bird.
Yeah.
He was the only one who didn't leave Newfoundland.
Really?
And he was the only one who really prospered because he became superintendent of a paper mill and was, well known in his community. And when he had to retire because he developed a heart condition. He had one heart attack after another. And part of it is because he loved to play cards, and he didn't like it when he didn't win. And so his blood pressure would go up to the sky. And that's the way he was. We met him, actually. He came to the States a couple times.
Oh, really?
He looked exactly like my father, facially, except my father was 6'1", and Jim was 5'7", but they were mirror image of one another.
So what was your mother like?
My mother was a flapper.
How so?
Those were the people in the 20s and early 30s who went out every night and danced and drank and enjoyed themselves. Flappers,
Yeah.
because of the kind of dresses they wore in those days. My mother worked as a PBX operator, worked for the telephone company at the time when you had to call the operator and it got plugged into the line that you wanted to reach. They didn't have automatic connections the way they have them now. And so they had PBX operators. So she'd sit there doing this and that with the connections all day long. The telephone company grew like crazy. And eventually they realized that, we've got to find something beyond these boards, because if we don't, we'll have to employ every working person in the country to operate these boards to handle the volume of telephone calls. So they developed Bell Laboratories, and Bell Laboratories came up with the system which we have now, where you pick up the phone and you dial and you automatically connect.
Yeah.
But they didn't have that in my mother's day.
Yeah.
And they were so desperate for telephone operators that they offered you $50, and that was a lot of money in those days, if you could recruit and find somebody who wanted to work for the phone company. So after my parents married, they were still in New York. My father was working out of the fish pier in New York. And during the Depression, there wasn't much work.
Right.
And things were really, 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 really tough. There was no unemployment compensation or anything like that.
Mhm.
So my grandfather and grandmother had moved to Boston with my uh, Aunt Addie and Uncle Jim. And my grandfather worked on the boats also. And he told my father that there's work in Boston. So they moved to Boston, and my father found work. My mother stayed home. My mother, at one time, had been a teacher. She didn't have a college education. She taught in what they call the Little Red Schoolroom, grades 1 to 8. My father had also been a teacher, actually. He taught 6th grade.
Really?
But as my aunt told me, he could never stick with anything or stay with anything. And during the Depression, he didn't work the fish pier. That's right. He was working for the railroad in the shop. What he was doing, I don't know. They cut everybody's pay by 10%. But it was still a job during the Depression. Then they cut everybody's pay by another 10%. We're not happy, but we still have work. Then they cut a third time, and the guys went out on strike. The railroad locked them out. A lockout means you can't go back to work even if you want to. And they hired replacements, which in union terminology is a scab. And they never went back to work, never got their work back. So my father had to start working at the fish pier because that was the only thing he knew. And then that dried up. So he was very, very fortunate, came to Boston, had work, regular work. And my mother settled in as a housewife. But when my father went off in the Navy, she had the total responsibility for everything.
Mhm.
This was very, very hard. Managing a household, managing finances and money, which she was no good at. My father was the money person, and he wasn't there. And just making decisions, disciplining 2 children, and she tended to be very permissive, which isn't really good for you. You need somebody to say no, and it was hard for her to say no.
Right. Do you think it was because she didn't want to have to kind of um, add another stress to her life? Like, oh, now I'm have to fight with my children and
Yes.
along with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, she, didn't want, and I can't blame her, to overburden herself and take on these other responsibilities. So she did a poor job of it.
Hmm.
We survived, but it wasn't easy.
Right. What do you think, not to get, too down, but How did, because your dad passed away when you were 14, right? Or how
Yeah, I
old were you?
wasn't quite 14, and that was a blow in the solar plexus. It hurt my sister even worse. She was 2 years younger, and she never recovered from it. She dropped out of high school and married the wrong guy. They had children, and she had a tough life, a hard scrabble life for her entire existence. Never had 2 pennies to one rub together. It was tough.
Yeah. How did you make it through?
Good teachers from high school.
Really?
I made a very good decision after grammar school. A recruiter from English High came in and spoke to us. Ed Bell, he was one of the teachers there, and he made an impression. He was just one of these people you would be impressed just by looking at him, and even more impressed once he started speaking. 3 of us signed up for English High. Best decision, one of the best decisions I ever made, because that they had a terrific faculty, a lot of older men who had seen and done and could provide you with guidance and advice and took an interest. And I wasn't going to be able to go to college. We were going to run out of money. Once we reached a certain age, the Social Security benefit for dependent children ceased. My mother wasn't working, and I knew that it was going to be years before I could get to college. So I had to think in terms of get the best education I could up to high school and then go out and get the best job I could
Mm.
and help out with family obligations. And thank God that English High was the type of atmosphere where I could absorb a lot of things. And then actually, they found me my first job. Somebody from uh, the Metcalf and Eddy and Alfred Hopkins and Associates joint venture came into English High recruiting for vacancies. And one of the vacancies was a high-level clerking job in the accounting department for which I could qualify. And I got the grand and glorious pay of $45 a week at a time when high school graduates were going out and making $35, and if they were lucky, maybe $38. And I got 45.
Yeah.
And I came again under the guidance of a couple of very good professional people, mature, who took an interest in me and helped me out, especially John Lane, who was the chief accountant and manager of the accounting department. He took me under his wing and brought me along.
How did he help you? Like, what were some of the things where he kind of guided you along?
He and his assistant, Jim White, immediately took an interest in me and made it their personal charge to correct my mistakes and show me the right way to do it and insist that it be done correctly.
Mhm.
And I was smart enough to pay attention and learn and not fight it. And I discovered I had the aptitude for accounting. And I was promoted and I learned new things and I developed these skills,
Mhm.
which helped me later on when I finally managed to get to college
Yeah.
because I had kind of a kickstart on accounting because I had learned a lot from them. John Lane, while This was an architect-engineer joint venture, and we were working on government contracts for Air Force bases in Greenland and Iceland. And there were 200 people in the Boston office and then a fair number overseas at the job sites. John Lane was an interesting character. He had worked at Lever Brothers. Oh, let me go backward.
Sure.
After he graduated from high school, he wanted to be a clerk stenographer, a court stenographer. And that meant you had to learn shorthand. There weren't any stenographic machines in those days, and court procedure.
Mhm.
So he went to this school which taught this kind of stuff and walked in to apply for to get into the school and discovered there was nobody there other than a couple of people in the office. And, why isn't there anybody here? Oh, well, Mr. Lane, it's a really hot day. There were no air conditioners in use in those days. And so we gave everybody the day off. Well, this didn't impress Mr. Lane because he thought you should be working.
Mhm.
So he walked out of there without signing up. And then for some reason, he went to Bentley, which was not a college at the time, the Bentley School of Accounting and Finance, which was not far from where this other place was. And he walked in there and discovered they're all there in this hot weather with the windows open, working like crazy. This is for me, thought he. So he signed up for Bentley.
Mhm.
And became an accountant and earned his Bentley certificate, which in those days was as good as a college degree in accounting.
Mhm.
And then this is the funny part. Am I?
No, please.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
He lived in East Cambridge, and at that time, the U.S. headquarters of Lever Brothers was located in East Cambridge. So he went to apply for a job in the accounting department. And the interviewer said, well, yeah, certainly, Mr. Lane, we'll give you a job and you'll start in the mailroom. The mailroom? Oh, yes, everybody starts in the mailroom. I'm an accountant. I don't want to start in the mailroom. I want to be interviewed by the chief accountant. Mr. Lane, we can't do that. And they went back and forth, and finally he prevailed. And he sat down before the chief accountant to be interviewed. Well, Mr. Lane, says this old guy with a big pot belly and suspenders, what's your goal in life? Your job, says Johnny Lane. Well, what makes you think that you can get my job? I've got one thing that you'll never have, says he to him. And what might that be? I've got my youth. I can sit here and wait until you die, and I'll still be young enough to get your job. He said all this to the guy, and he was hired. 13 years later, he was in charge of a 300-person accounting department. He worked there 26 years.
Yeah.
Lever Brothers eventually moved to New York. There's a big story behind this, but I don't want to take your time explaining it, but it's really interesting.
Mhm.
Someday I'll tell you
Oh,
personally.
you can come on again and tell that story, yeah.
So eventually John Lane ended up working for the joint venture as the chief accountant. Later he became office manager, and office manager sounds like a subordinate position, but in that place it was like the chief administrative officer.
Mhm.
And after he left there because the venture had completed and there were no longer any jobs,
Mm.
he went in with his son, who had started a plumbing business, and told his son, I'll come in with you, but you have to get into the oil business too, so you'll be big enough for both of us.
Mhm. What, when you were starting out in the accounting firm, uh, this is just a setup to get you to tell this story that I absolutely love. Um, were there any difficult, let's just say, clients or people you had to deal with who may or may not have not paid the
Oh,
bills on?
when I went out on my own years later and started my own practice,
I believe so.
were there any difficult clients that I had to deal
You need
with?
to maybe kind of give a little kick a few times and let them pay their bills.
Well, when I had clients who were difficult and uncooperative, I dropped them
Mhm.
because I wanted first and foremost to give my attention to good clients. And I regarded the difficult clients as a distraction. So they didn't survive very long with me.
Yeah, but so there's I remember you telling me this one story, it might have been before you started your own practice, but, it had to do with a guy and a pail of pennies. Do you know what I'm
Oh,
referring?
what? Oh, oh, I've forgotten that story. That was told to me by one of my high school teachers, John Keelan, when he started out as a youngster working as an accountant in an office somewhere. And one of his jobs was to count and reconcile the petty cash box.
Mhm.
And he spent an enormous amount of time trying to get it to balance, and it didn't balance. It was off by 25 cents. The office manager came over to him and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, no, I just can't get right. I'm off. I can't find it. How much are you off by? 25 cents. The office manager reached into the box, took out 25 cents, threw it out the window, and said, "Now you're balanced. Go do something else."
But so I don't know. So I don't think I've heard that story, but there was a specific story I remember you telling me about a client who didn't pay his bill on time or whatever.
Oh,
Yes.
my Richie
Yes.
Schiffer story.
Yes. That's right.
Okay.
Please do
My
tell.
friend and my longtime client, Richie Schiffer, referred me to someone who turned out to be, and Richie didn't realize this, not a very good client. And this guy, I finally had to disengage, and he owed me money. He didn't pay it. And next time I saw Richie, he asked me, "How did you make out?" And I said, "Well, I didn't have very good luck with this guy. He didn't want to pay any taxes. He didn't want to report any income. He turned out to be not a good client. And the guy stiffed me. Oh, no, 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 no. He's not going to get away with that." Now, Richie was about 6'2" and pretty good size. Next thing I knew, Richie paid a visit to my office, came in and put a bag down on my desk, and it was filled with money,
Mhm.
cash money. I went over to that little SOB, and I took him and picked him up by the feet and shook him, and all this money came out. I don't know whether it's enough, but it's all he had. I swear to you, that's a true story.
Oh my gosh. How do you Did you just live a very colorful life, or did you get a knack for telling stories? Because you have so many of these wonderful little anecdotes and you tell them so well.
I don't know why developed a knack for telling stories, but it seemed even in grammar school, I would, well, one of my teachers got frustrated with me completely because I would argue with her and point and counterpoint, which you're not supposed to do, teacher. William Delaney, you argue like a Philadelphia lawyer. Okay, she's the one, sister, and I won't say her name, would always complain when we were in line and my shirt tail was hanging, because we'd been out on the playground playing, and you do that, and you're pretty ruffled. William Delaney, tuck in your shirt tail. This isn't Flag Day.
This isn't
And
Flag.
one day it was Flag Day. So I said to the guys, let's see what's going to happen when I pull my shirt tail out. So I pulled my shirt tail out and I heard the same, well, sister, it's Flag Day. Oh, tuck it in anyhow. And all the guys just were roariously laughing. We got the better on her that day, but usually you don't.
Yeah. So I don't know. This was in high school or junior high school or when it was, but there was a teacher who stood on a desk one time and was screaming at the kids.
Sister Mary Odetta, whom I just loved to death.
Oh no, this was a man, and he had a drinking problem.
Oh, high school. Okay.
Yes, high school.
And I guess I shouldn't mention his name, even though he's long dead. This man was a Rhodes Scholar, but he was an alcoholic. And he had tenure, and so I guess you couldn't get rid of him. And it got so bad that the head of the department moved his desk into this guy's homeroom to be with him while he was in the homeroom before the first period to make sure he didn't go crazy. I had him, I think it was the second period. And one day he came in, well, he always wore a double-breasted suit, and a lot of pockets in a double-breasted suit. And he came in one day, and he was not clean-shaven. In those days, you shaved. And he was wobbling back and forth a little bit. So he started emptying his pockets. First thing that came out was a dart. And a few sorted other things, because he's looking for his tube of shaving cream and his razor, which he finally found, because he was going to get the next period, he was going to shave. And one day, just before lunchtime, I passed his room, and he was standing astride two desks. He's standing on top of the two desks with his arms raised. Hell's bellows, man! I'm the quarterback here. And he was very eccentric.
Yeah.
Very eccentric. When he wasn't, he was a good teacher, but it didn't happen too often.
Mm-hmm.
The poor guy eventually lost his life. He drowned. And, it was really sad. But it was just out of control.
Yeah. So how did you meet your betrothed, your wife, my lovely grandmother?
We both worked for what was then the First National Bank of Boston. I got a job there, let's see. Yeah, after coming out of the Army. Mary had worked there for a while, and she was well, I don't know exactly what you call it. This was bookkeeping using tabular equipment, uh, not computers, but something close. And I came in the, I guess it was the adjustment department, what it was called. I can't remember. But I had to interact regularly with the 30 or 40 person bookkeeping staff. So I got to know Mary. And we had a few mutual friends. Eventually, we started dating. After I left the bank.
Really? So you stayed in contact with her?
Yeah.
Wow.
We both lived in JP.
Oh. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hmm. How did you propose? I don't know if I know that story.
In my car, sitting in her driveway.
Really?
Yeah. I chose to do it that way, I don't know, but it just seemed to be the right time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Was she shocked? Like, was it something that you talked about a lot,
I
or?
suppose she sort of expected it,
Mhm.
but we were quite pleased. I once remarked that the happiest days, and I don't mean we went downhill from there, but the happiest days were right after we were married and we spent all the time furnishing our home and, buying furniture and making the decisions about how it would look like, what kind of rug, what kind of this, what kind of that. It was really a lot of fun. And we bought a house. We didn't rent.
What have you learned? Just kind of, I mean, you're celebrating your 60th wedding anniversary this year. What have you learned through like almost 60 years of being married to the same person and also just raising children and as a husband and a father?
Well, when you're raising children, you've got to learn to say no. And we were willing to say no, for which the girls both thanked us later in life because their friends had parents who wouldn't say no. So some of their friends had problems that Ann and Susan didn't have because we were the other way.
Hmm.
And fortunately for us, Mary and I seem to think the same way most of the time. And very fortunately for me, Mary was very good with money. I shouldn't tell you this story
Please
because
do.
she'll see the thing, but I'll tell you the
Please
story.
do tell the story.
After we were married, I discovered that your grandmother had this habit. She'd get her monthly, and she worked, as you know, as a teacher and a school psychologist. They were paid monthly.
Mhm.
She'd get her monthly check, and she had plenty of money left over from last time. So she'd take the check and put it in her pocketbook. Then a month would go by. She'd get another check, and she still had plenty of money. So she'd take that and put it in her pocketbook. And it wasn't unusual for her to have 3 paychecks in her pocketbook. I discovered that, and I urged her, and you deposit the doggone checks before you lose them. But she was so good with money, she hardly ever spent.
Wow.
Yet she didn't deprive herself.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. They say opposites attract, and she grew up in a very.
We weren't opposite.
Right. Well, your upbringings were opposite because she grew up in a very kind of strict household, very kind of religious, and obviously, I'm sure you were Catholic as well, but stable household as well. It's almost like you had to learn how to be stable before you met grandma almost. Where because I mean, you grew
Yeah,
up in an
well,
unstable household.
stable I was not. I marched to the beat of my own drummer.
Hmm.
I still do.
But this you had to learn discipline. You had to learn or you were taught that by people outside of your household. But she was, I guess your upbringing is very different, but when you met each other, you were very similar, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they were, and, her mother was a kind of a remarkable person for her age because she did things that, Irish immigrants didn't do.
Mhm.
She owned stocks, telephone company, and she couldn't see why they couldn't just buy a house, which my parents would never do. They were just terrified of uh, buying a house and having that kind of responsibility and making the payments every month, although you paid the rent.
Mm,
So she bought a house.
yeah.
So, Mary had a different experience than I. She had a parent or parents who had a positive approach, whereas my mother had a very negative approach. Nothing is good is ever going to happen. Hunker down. And my sister, unfortunately, developed that same attitude. Nothing good is ever going to happen. Grab the first job you can get, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
It's a mindset.
Now, does that mindset kind of, obviously doesn't now, but do you think that wasn't just inside your household, that was kind of in your neighborhood, in your town in Southeast, like,
Uh, for many people, it was. But I'll tell you about the Hurlbus family. They lived up the street. And Bill was a Navy veteran of World War II. Any veteran could buy a house by putting 10% down,
mm,
and you get a mortgage which the government would back up. So the banks would take the 90% mortgage. He found a two-family house for sale for $5,000. Of course, this was those
way back
days.
in the day?
Skunt scraped up $500, although he didn't have a big income and he had a large family, and put it down on the house. And when he died and left the house to Millie, it was worth $200,000.
Oh my gosh.
When my father died, he had nothing.
Yeah.
And it would have been far easier for my father to find $500 than it was for Bill. But my father was afraid to do it.
Why do you think he was afraid to do it, that he couldn't?
Afraid because people lost houses during the Depression.
Okay.
And he thought that the Hurlebuses were putting on airs. In other
Oh,
words,
yeah.
they were too big for their britches.
Mm,
I mean, just the other way around. They were making a smart move, and we weren't making any kind of a move.
mhm,
And that was also so of the folks in the neighborhood. Very seldom did anybody move,
mm.
and very rarely did anybody own a house. Everybody rented.
It was a very, how do I say it? Risk-averse atmosphere that you
Yeah,
grew up in?
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. You had your own little neighborhood, your own little place. Everybody knew everybody. You were safe.
mm,
And so you didn't want to do anything to disturb that.
mm. Now, how did you make the decision? Now, you talked about this a little bit, but to kind of get out of that atmosphere, to get out of that, not low life area, obviously, but
Well, first I was influenced by my teachers in high school.
right.
And then also TV came in, and you could watch the TV and see that there were all of these fancy neighborhoods and everybody didn't live the way we did. And between the two, I realized that there really wasn't any difference between me and my counterpart who lived in Newton, except that he lived in Newton.
Mm,
And so I decided that I would kind of spread my wings and see what the rest of the place was like and get the hell out of Southie. No disrespect to Southie, but I had to leave in order to expand. We went to Jamaica Plain. And when Mary and I married, we didn't want to live in Boston because we could see what was going to happen with the schools and busing. It hadn't happened at that point. It was about to happen.
Mm.
And we could see that it was going to be dysfunctional. And we didn't want our children to be going to public schools, which were grappling with this. And I worked in Needham at the time, and Mary had 3 or 4 different schools which she visited as a psychologist, which were in the general neighborhood or general vicinity of West Roxbury. So Westwood was a fairly central location for both of us. And we just got lucky we found the right house which we could afford.
Mhm.
Interesting as to how we got the mortgage.
How'd you get the mortgage?
Hmm?
How'd you get the mortgage?
Well, in those days, the banks looked at you and they'd rather not lend to you. It was difficult. You had to kind of fight and argue with them. So I say I worked in Needham, and one of the people who we knew quite well was a builder in Needham who happened also to be a director of what was then the Needham Cooperative Bank. And when 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 we decided to buy this house, I thought, well, Sterl Holt can help me out with the mortgage. So I talked to him, and it turned out he was on the committee of 3, which inspected all the houses before the bank would loan. I mean, I don't think they do this today. So Sterl asked me where it was located and so on. And he came around one day and I gave him the keys. The committee went and looked at the house. Of course, he was a builder, so he could evaluate the whole house. He came back later and gave me the keys and said, "You have the mortgage." I never set foot in the bank. Oh, you'll probably have to go see somebody. He gave me the name at the bank and he'll sign a few papers, but everything is fine.
And it was all set, just like that.
Everything was fine until we decided to move 10 years later to where we're living now and needed another mortgage.
Mm.
So I went to the bank. Sterl had long since retired. And the only one who was giving mortgages was the president of the bank. And I won't mention his name. He was a cantankerous old guy. And I went to see him. "You know, we lost money on that mortgage that we gave you 10 years ago when the rates are higher." Is that my fault? I paid the going rate. Well, so I said to him, "Well, how much is the mortgage going to be on the interest rate on this mortgage?" Wouldn't tell me. He'd tell me later, maybe. And I was really put off by that entirely. So I decided this is not where we were going to get our mortgage now.
Yeah, I'd say
So
so.
went to another bank and got the mortgage, not a problem.
Mm. Now, what made you want to kind of expand your, let's just say, real estate portfolio?
Well, we were living in a nice, comfortable 6-room house in Westwood, and Mary's father died.
Mhm.
So her mother was alone in that house in West Roxbury, and it was too much for her. and was gonna nickel and dime her to death, and she couldn't do this, and she couldn't do that, and she was getting older. So, we and the family knew that she'd have to come move in with one of us. At the time, nobody really had any room for her, including us. So we looked around for a bigger house, and we thought at first we were gonna have to move out of Westwood because we wouldn't be able to find anything that we could afford. And then we looked out. This house had been on the market all summer, hadn't sold, I don't know why. And the owner was facing the possibility of it being on the market. No wonder when houses typically don't sell. So he dropped the price from 80,000 to 70,000. Just about the time when we discovered the house.
Wow.
So Mary and I looked at it, and of course, you know the way the house is laid out. It's much bigger than the house we were living in.
Mm.
And for a woman, the key to the house is the kitchen.
Right.
And we have a big kitchen. So when Mary saw the size of the kitchen, she was delighted. And when I saw the size of the other rooms, I was delighted. And it had two full baths and a half bath. Wow!
Yeah. Now you eventually did a little add-on to the house with your office, right?
Oh, I forgot the rest of the story.
Oh, more story.
This house had 2 rooms over the garage. It was a large room which had been converted to 2 rooms because the present owner also had an in-law living with them, and he developed this for them, for him or for her, I guess. And so this had an in-law apartment on the first floor, near the kitchen, and near a bath. So it was ideal for us. That's what sold the house, because now we had something where we could bring Anna in, and she had her own space. She had her own bedroom. She had her own living room.
Mm. So, okay. Yeah, yeah, that's right, because the two-car garage is right below where her little apartment is,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I see. And then right next to that, uh,
Oh, my
yes,
office,
that's when
that
you
was
added on
added
your
years
office.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How now, when did you decide? Because you had your own practice, I assume, or did you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
So,
had started it.
now did you get laid off at what happened? You got laid off and then you went on your own, or how did that
Well,
work?
I won't name the company I was working for because of the story I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
I was the chief accountant there, which today would be controller. And I reported to the treasurer, which today would be chief financial officer. So I ran the accounting department. Without putting too much making too much of a point of it, through maintaining good, solid internal controls, I discovered that the treasurer was a thief.
Really?
Yeah. But when you're going to accuse your boss of being a thief, you damn well better have proof. And it was all little things, but I could read the tea leaves, but I couldn't prove that he was trying to go for the big hit. So I had to pile up all of this stuff. And then suddenly he made a $5,000 withdrawal. And I said to myself, if he gets away with this, next thing I know, he'll be grabbing 50,000. I've got to stop it at this point.
Mm.
We had a president who had recently arrived. He and I hardly even spoke 2 words. And so I had to tell them that I needed to see him. I really couldn't tell them why. I ran into him in the bathroom on a Saturday morning and told him I needed to see him. And he told me he was about to leave a 30-day trip to the Far East. Great. Well, I had to wait 30 days, and that was my first mistake. I should have gone to the chairman of the board, whom I'd known for years and was a just fine gentleman, and told him what I found out. But I didn't. I figured, you know, it's the president. I don't want to blindside him by jumping him, although I could have.
Mm.
So I waited for his return, told him what I had discovered, showed him my proof. He called the parent company. They sent down their financial guy who looked and said, "He's a thief, fire him." They didn't fire him after. Let him work out his 2 weeks' notice, which was kind of tough for me because I just wanted to stay the hell away from him. I wanted to kill him, really.
Yeah.
So he left, and the financial guy from the parent company became the treasurer and chief financial officer. And at first, he and I got along fine. What I didn't know was that he had a friend, and he wanted to bring the friend in. And the only job worthy of the friend was my job. So that made me a short-timer.
Mm.
And 6 months later, I was gone.
Yeah.
That was my reward for catching a thief.
Yeah. You were dismissed.
Yeah, and, the thing of it is, I wasn't allowed to resign. I was fired. And I went into his office on a Friday afternoon and to be evaluated. It was our annual evaluation, and there's a long checklist of things. I was rated unsatisfactory in every category, including attendance. "With this record," says he to me, "you can't work here anymore." And I knew I was a short-timer. I knew this was going to happen. So I had cleaned my desk. And all that week, I had an absolute clean desk, the drawers, everything. There was nothing. I wouldn't take anything or do anything which would carry over to the next day because I knew the axe was going to fall. So I just kept delegating. Everybody in the department knew it was going to happen.
Mm.
So when I went in there and he told me, "You can't work here anymore," I said, "I'll be gone by 5 o'clock." It was like 3:30 in the afternoon. "Well, how can you? I know you and I haven't told you for no." I said, "Look, they all know. You can't hide this kind of stuff." I knew it was coming. So I left. But I couldn't give the company as a reference because. And then I thought about it, and I realized, Bill, you're 40. You're not too far away from where there's going to be age discrimination. I went out to an employment agency and asked them to find me the same job, kind of job.
Yeah.
And when I left there, I said to myself, "What the heck kind of idiotic thing have you just done? In 5, 6, 8 years, you'll be in the same soup, and you'll be older." And I knew a couple of people who got laid off when they were around 50 and could never find a comparable job again because there's age discrimination. Why should we pay him when we can hire somebody 20 years younger and pay him a lot less? So that's what tipped me into thinking that the best move for me would be to expand my tiny little practice and become full-time.
Mhm. Now, when did you start working from home and doing that? Because that's obviously becoming much more common nowadays with the internet and with Zoom and with all
I'm
that.
trying to think of when I was released. Golly, when did that happen? It's been so long ago. 1974.
Wow.
And I didn't have an office or anything at the time, so I had to appropriate a bedroom and turn it into an office.
Mm.
And that didn't work very well, like trying to see clients in a bedroom upstairs.
Yeah.
So a few years later, I asked one of my contractor clients to build me an office addition, 300 square feet. And it's worked fine ever since.
Mm.
Of course, when I expanded the practice and moved to Wellesley, we had an office suite. But then when I kind of semi-retired and backed off, I started working entirely from the office again.
Mhm.
Still do.
Yeah, you still do.
Yeah.
How much work? Because I mean, I don't want to. Would you mind if I say your age or no?
uh, I don't mind admitting I'm 90.
You don't mind it.
I'm puzzled by it because I don't know how the hell I ever last as long as I have, but I don't mind admitting to being 90.
Yeah, and you're still working. You're still at it.
I
Because
enjoy it.
yeah.
And one thing about, well, I don't do much of any accounting anymore. It's all taxes with a little peripheral accounting. One thing about it is you can cut back. You don't have to stop. So you can do a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less, which is the way I did it,
Mhm.
and sold off part of my practice, and then second round sold off part of my practice. And now I'm down to just a few elderly clients whom I hope I will be able to outlive.
Yeah.
I have two, well, I had two who were 98. One died in February.
Mm.
I have several who are in their mid to upper 90s. Mary and I went to uh, see one. She's 95,
Wow.
and Mary had never met her, and I said, you've got to come with me because she's a hot ticket. And Mary couldn't believe the vigor that Gloria has in her 95th birthday, and how she can go up and down the flight of stairs. I mean, she's remarkable,
Really?
and she's just the loveliest person.
How long have you had her as a client?
She's among those whom we purchased in 1986.
Now, how many clients have you had that have lived into their hundreds, or have you had any
Oh,
clients?
yeah, yeah. I've had 3 or 4 at least who broke 100.
Really?
Yeah, one lady a few years ago died at 103. She was really good mentally until her last year, and in her last year, she started slipping. Knew who I was, but she was slipping. Unfortunate situation in that she had one son who was in his 70s, and his health was worse than hers. He outlived her, but he had terminal cancer. And then when he started slipping, he went quickly. She called me one day, and her son, he lived with her. He'd fallen and couldn't get up. And of course, I'm in Westwood and she's in Wellesley. It would take me a while to get there. So I called the Wellesley police and they came over, but she didn't know who to call.
Yeah. Because she was, so elderly and she didn't really have any
Yeah, and
people to.
she couldn't pick him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he fell because he had a bad leg, among other things, and at the time, he didn't know he had cancer, but he was not well. she was better than he,
Right.
which is kind of not odd because of the difference in age.
Mhm. Wow.
And, I had either 3 or 4 who broke 100 and a number who were in the upper 90s when they died, yeah.
Wow. Do you think you'll reach 100?
Hmm?
Do you think you'll reach 100?
They didn't quite make it to
Do you
100.
think you will, though?
Do I think I will?
Yeah, because 'Cause you've gotten this far already.
Well, I'll tell you the story of what one doctor said to me, well, I guess I'll tell you the entire story.
Please, yeah.
Yeah.
We're here anyway.
I had a mass on my gallbladder. Doctor was watching it, and she said, "Well, if it gets any worse or if it bothers you, we'll have your gallbladder removed." And suddenly it expanded. I wasn't having much difficulty, but when it expanded, it started pushing against my rib cage. And I discovered that if I wanted to yawn or take a deep breath, I was having pain. So I found a way to mitigate the pain. Do this before you yawn.
Mm,
But that indicated to her that we got to get their gallbladder out.
right.
So she uh, arranged for me to see a surgeon whom I had seen before and had a couple of operations on my leg. And he looked at everything on the portal and the uh, charts and the pictures of this and everything. And he came in and brought us over to the screen, showed us this, showed us that, and said, when we see this, it's almost always cancer. So I'm thinking, like, filled with cancer. What he didn't know is that when the doctor told me I have to take gallbladder out, I thought and realized that I had a doctor at Mass General who had been a client until I had to cut back, and he was a gastric surgeon.
Mm,
So I figured, well, I'll talk to him and see, get a second opinion before I get the first opinion. So I had the advantage of having talked to him. He looked at it. He could see the portal as well because these hospitals are affiliated. And he told me, first words out of his mouth, "Bill, it isn't cancer." He's reading my mind. But it's a very serious infection. We have to get it down before I remove your gallbladder. I never had to ask him. So I said,
wow.
"Carlos, are you sure you're going to have time to do this?" He said, "Bill, this is all I do. Talk to my office manager, make an appointment." It's simple. So I knew it wasn't cancer. Now we'll fast forward to this first doctor whom I saw second, and he's telling me he's seen cancer. And I was going to tell him what the other doctor had said. But then the next thing out of his mouth was, "How long do you expect to live?" And I said, "Well, I never expected to live to be 80, and I guess I'm just about 88, so probably 95. "No, you won't." Just like that. "No, you won't." So I said, I'm not going to tell this guy what I know, and I'm not going to tell him that I'm already scheduled to have my gallbladder removed as general. So he was very apologetic in the end, and he hates to give bad news for people, but he could operate, but he couldn't get it all out, and it spread, and god awful things were going to happen, and I was going to die.
Yeah.
Except I knew I wasn't going to die. Strange situation. So I had the gallbladder out.
Mhm.
So I said to the doctor after the surgery. Did you get it all? He said, oh, yeah, I've got it all, you know. He said, there was a problem. What was the problem? He said it was leaking. The infection was so bad that it had eaten through part of the lining and was starting to weep. In other words, the infection was leaking from the gallbladder and caught it just in time. So I said, what would have happened had you not removed it when you did? He said, Bill, you'd end up in the emergency room in terrible pain. And then we'd have to put a stent in there and drain it. And you'd have that stent in you draining for the rest of your life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I dodged that bullet. Because I just happened to know somebody.
Yeah. Wow. Now, have you gotten very far with connections with like, oh, I know a guy? Because, that's all people talk about now is in order to get ahead, you have to have connections. In order to be this, you have to have connections.
Boston is a big city, but it's really a small town. And if you've lived in this area long enough and come in contact with people, it seems as though there's always somebody that you know who knows somebody.
Right.
And you kind of reach out and everybody does it. And, well, I knew Carlos. Not because he'd ever, actually, it has to do with Alana.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. We were talking to Alana one day, and she said that she was going to go over to her friend Anna's house. That's nice. They live in Newton. Didn't mean anything to me. Everybody, lots of people live in Newton. Her father is a doctor. That didn't mean anything to me. Newton's loaded with doctors. They have a very long last name. Bingo, it's got to be, my friend. So I told her what the long last name was. It's Mexican. How did you know, says she. So anyhow, when she went over to visit, she told his wife about the cancer problems I was then having. And so when he came home, she told him.
Mm.
So anyhow, I was down the Cape recovering from a cancer surgery, and he called me. Anything he could do, talk about it, second opinion, whatever. And I thought this was really nice, so I kept it in my mind that if I really needed to talk to him, I could give him a call. So when this gallbladder thing came up, I'm sitting in my office on a Friday afternoon and wondering, maybe I should call Carlos before I see this other guy. Friday afternoon, 2:00. Call his office, speak to his office manager, because he's a department head. He had gastric surgery, and then he's a co-department head for oncological gastric surgery. So his specialty is pancreatic cancer. Didn't think you could do anything for pancreatic cancer, but anyhow, I called him, spoke to his office manager, and she said, he's in surgery. I'll let him know when he comes out. Great. So I figured next week I'll hear from him, and maybe even before I see the first doctor. 4:00 in the afternoon, he calls me. He got back. She told him. He went right to the portal, saw everything, and called me, and then went through the conversation. It's not cancer, etc. I'll remove your gallbladder, talk to my office manager, and schedule whatever. All due to Alana.
So you have your granddaughter to thank for your help.
Yeah. Bolt out of the blue.
Yeah, it's true. So, I don't know how honest you can be with this next question because I'm sitting right here, but what's it like having grandchildren? Because I won't know that feeling for a while.
The best thing that can ever happen to you.
Really.
Oh, yeah. You can live vicariously through your grandchildren.
Mhm.
When, in year 2000, I was old enough to draw on Social Security. The rule then was, that if your income exceeded certain levels, you had to forfeit, and I was still working full-time, so there was no point in my drawing Social Security because I'd forfeit every dollar that I earned.
Right.
And then in November of that year, or maybe sooner than that, the Congress decided that they would waive the earnings requirement once you reach age 65. You could collect, and it didn't matter how much money you were earning from work. So that made me eligible to collect, and I started collecting Social Security. Mary's, I guess she had stopped at that point because Catherine had been born. She's drawing her pension. I'm working full time. We didn't need any money. Now this Social Security thing is coming in every month. What are we going to do with it? Well, we have grandchildren. Why don't we open 529 plans and start putting money away for their college? Why not? So over the years, we took just about every dime that came in for Social Security and pumped it into 529 plans.
Oh, wow.
And we loved it. We could do something for our grandchildren and it wouldn't affect us financially. And then all this money would accumulate and they'd be able to take advantage of it. And hopefully we'd still be alive to see them using it.
Yeah.
And I once declared that I want to live long enough to see our youngest grandchild graduate from college. So that, if you do the math,
Yeah.
that meant I had to live to 94 or 95. And the way it looks right now, I may do that.
I know.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
What's it like seeing, because I don't know what it's like to be a father, let alone a grandfather, but what is it like seeing your grandkids, another generation, not just your kids, mature and grow up and experience life, and you can see it kind of through a different perspective and
Marvelous. Absolutely. We're so proud.
mm,
It's not that you become millionaires, but that you're all decent people. Your parents have brought you up properly. And I mean, you're just so proud. All five. And all five are different.
yeah, yeah, we're all very different and also very
Yeah,
similar as
yeah,
well.
yeah. No, it's marvelous. I highly recommend it.
I'll be partaking in that. I'll be partaking in that venture pretty soon,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
See how they've matured, how they start making decisions. Oh, I mean, look at that adventure that, Alana and Kara enjoyed over in Rome.
Yeah, exactly. Going all over Rome.
Yeah,
I should have them on to
and,
talk
you know,
about it.
this were there when the Pope died and so on. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's yeah. I mean, I could relate that to my time overseas when, I was in the army and did a little traveling in Europe, and I knew that, gee, do it now because it's gonna be years before you'll ever be able to do it again.
Mm. So, okay, army, good point. I don't think we talked about this yet. What was the army like? Well, first of all, how did you say, "Oh, I want to enlist," or did it just kind of happen? Or
You don't say, "I want to enlist," I got drafted.
oh, you did get drafted.
Oh, yeah, we had the
Oh, I thought
draft
you
then, yeah.
enlisted.
See, this
Oh,
was, I was drafted right after the Korean War calmed down and we started talking, negotiating, and there was a ceasefire. So thank God I wouldn't be drafted and sent over into a war zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into the Army and completed basic training. And I figured with my clerical background, I'd be sent to clerk typist school. And, that was fine. Then I'd get a job in an office somewhere, and I'd spend my time doing that. And the Army, in its infinite wisdom, assigned me to radio operator school. So I went to radio operator school and became a Sparky.
Mm-hmm.
5 of us then, I'm getting ahead of myself. We were then able to select where we would go based on class seniority. I was down in the middle somewhere. So some of the choice assignments, like Long Island and so on, they were gone. But I still had 3. One was Far East. One was in the middle of Texas. I think it was Fifth Army. And one was Europe. The sergeants advised us, don't go to the middle of Texas. It's just blistering hot. There's nothing there. So that ruled that out. Okay. Asia could be either Korea or Japan. Well, gee, Japan would be nice to visit. But I didn't want to take a chance that I'd be sent to Korea, especially what was going on there. It could erupt at any time. So I chose Germany. So 5 of us went to this field artillery battalion, 5 radio operators. Now, they needed 5 radio operators like they needed a hole in the head. And I was the designated records carrier. I had the 5 records jackets. So we went into the headquarters, and the battalion executive, Major Fawcett, was there. I handed him the records jackets. Radio operators. They could use 2. They didn't need 5. There's a reason why the Army sent 5. I'll explain that another time.
Okay.
What he did need was somebody who could type, because their battalion headquarters clerk was a short-timer. He'd be gone in 2 weeks, and they couldn't replace him. And again, there's another reason for that, which I'll explain to you sometime. Can anyone here type, says he. Well, in those days, there were no computers, okay? And we're basically talking manual typewriter. We weren't even talking electric.
Right.
And I was so fast. Like Speedy Gonzales, I was fast. The typical standard graduating from clerk typist school was 30 words a minute. I could type 80 with accuracy. Yeah, I could fly. So I said to myself, I'm going to have some fun. Let's see what he does when I tell him this. Raised my hand. How fast can you type? I knew he was going to ask that. 80 words a minute, sir. Well, there was silence, because the guys knew 80 words, how fast that was. And he figured I'm pulling his chain. Southern gentleman, I loved him. He's just a great guy. He points to a desk with a typewriter on it and says, come here. I looked at the typewriter. It's a German typewriter. Oh, my God, I don't know the German keyboard. But it was an American keyboard. I sat down, start typing away. He stopped me. looked at the paper, and there were no typing errors. Brought me in to meet the colonel. I had the job. They looked at my records jacket, and Major Fawcett said to Colonel Hughes, look at this. It was what the Army measures as your IQ. It's a combination of a couple of tests which are combined and then divided to come up with some kind of an average. And the score I had was 138, which I didn't know, but they knew was the highest in the battalion. And I don't know how meaningful this kind of thing is.
Yeah.
Because 3 months later, somebody came in and he was 140. Also from Massachusetts, as a down.
Really?
Well, anyhow, that made them very happy, and I had the job. It was a great job. You know, you're working in the headquarters for the colonel and the major. They were Southern gentlemen, fine people to work for. I mean, I can tell you, if you want, okay, my Sergeant Wagner story. It's sad.
Yeah.
Sergeant Wagner was our barrack sergeant. You picture this building, and there are cots and so forth. And then at the end, there's this little room, which was called a cadre room. And we had a barrack sergeant, and his name was Wagner. He was a staff sergeant, which was E5 at the time. Now it's E6.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Wagner was really, really the, let's see, in the infantry you call it a company, but in the artillery, trying to think of the name that for company, but doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
He was the company commander's favorite. He could do no wrong. Wagner had this thing about getting up and going to the bathroom just as soon as reveille was called at 5 o'clock in the morning. And we had to then be out of formation at it was 5:45, and then we go to breakfast. Wayne Fackler and I always liked to get up early and get finished before the crowd. And the only person in there at that time was Wagner. Everybody got finished and they got out. We all made reveille, made a roll call and all, but he didn't like that. One day, the guys went up to the headquarters, the battery, for the passes. Saturday afternoon, you could go out.
For the weekend or just Saturday afternoon?
Weekend, yeah. And discovered that their passes had been pulled by Sergeant Wagner, who could just do it. Wayne and myself were the only two whose passes hadn't been pulled, and we hadn't made the connection at the time. So anyhow, we left and started walking downtown. Said, this isn't right. They can't get out and we can. So we stopped at a bakery, bought a nice big chocolate cake, and came back to the barracks with the chocolate cake. And all sat around plotting our revenge against Wagner. He was a dead duck. Wagner had a girlfriend a German girlfriend. And I guess he was smitten. And he could leave for the weekend, which he would do. And he started not returning on Sunday evening at the required time. He didn't show up until early Monday morning. He was making it to roll call, but there were times when he didn't, and we'd cover for him and say he was in the barracks,
Mhm.
which was okay, and then nobody bothered a sergeant about not being up where he should be, as long as they knew where he was. So we covered for him. And then this happened. So we're sitting around eating chocolate cake. We're not going to cover for this guy again. But it happened again. Then we're out for roll call. One absent, sir. Well, boy, that shut everybody down. Who's absent? Sergeant Wagner, sir. Oh, my God. So Sergeant Wagner went up before the colonel for court-martial. It was AWOL, absent without leave. And the colonel reduced him in grade to corporal, E4, which was my grade, except I was an E4, but I was a specialist E4. He would be a corporal E4.
Wow.
Not much of a difference,
Yeah.
but there was a difference. When he went back to the company commander promoted him to acting sergeant so he wouldn't have to remove his stripe. Now, he wasn't being paid as a sergeant, but he looked like a sergeant.
Right. To make it easier for him
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Do you have fond memories of that time of being in the
Now,
Army?
I'll have to correct what I said a minute ago. He didn't appear before the colonel. He appeared before Major McNutt, because Colonel Hughes and Major Fawcett had left by that time, and Major McNutt was temporarily in command of the the battalion.
Mhm.
And as soon as Major McNutt heard what had happened, I don't know why it is, he used to tell me everything. If this ever happens again, if he goes AWOL, I'll rip those stripes right off of his arm and dare that so-and-so down at the headquarters to try to get them back on. And there was just, McNutt seemed to know everything that was going on. He knew all about. It happened again. Wagner didn't show up. We didn't cover for him. He was reduced to corporal, and he remained a corporal. But he was still kind of more ranked than we, although we were E4s. So he could keep his cadre room.
Mm.
Then he did it again. I don't know what was going on in the guy's mind. I mean, he's ruining a career.
Yeah.
He was reduced in grade to PFC.
Oh my gosh.
He lost his cadre room, and now we all outranked him. So he had to come out and sleep and clean the latrine and do all the things everybody else did.
Yeah.
Well, at that time, I was a short-timer. I was close to going home, and I got what was called an early port call. So I was leaving 3 weeks before I should have.
Mhm.
The day that I left, I was up at the battalion headquarters waiting for my transportation to the train station and talking to my friend, Dwayne Hauber. And the MPs went by. I said, gee, I wonder where they're going. And Dwayne looked at me and said, haven't you heard? Heard what? Wagner went AWOL again, and they're going to get him.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know whatever happened to the guy, but I was gone. So he screwed up his entire career over a girl whom he could have seen
Yeah.
and return to the barracks timely, but I don't know, he just didn't do it.
Did you come across a lot of those people in your time of people who were kind of had everything going for them, who had wonderful kind of attributes, and then just let their life
Yeah,
fall
they
apart?
they they have a self-destruct button, and it's so difficult to recover from that. I don't know why they do it. You spend all of this time working hard, getting ahead,
Mm,
and then you defeat yourself.
mm. You said a lot with sports figures as well. Like,
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
just recently, obviously, it's a bigger story, but
Pete Rose,
yeah, Pete Rose or Tiger Woods more recently.
Tiger Woods,
And
yeah,
then,
yeah.
of course, the guys on steroids. I mean, they were all fine players.
Uh,
But, like Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before he took steroids and he juiced up and
yeah,
scarred basically for life.
yeah, you're not doing well enough.
Mm.
You know you shouldn't do it. You do it anyhow. Why do you think you're not gonna get caught? Why did Vrabel do what he did?
Oh gosh, that's such a sad story. Just again, everything going for him
Yeah,
on top of the world, and then you
yeah,
have that incident.
yeah. I don't get it. I
I
mean,
don't get it either. But I definitely think maybe not with all people, but I'm sure some people have this sense of I don't deserve this, I'm not good enough, so let me try and tear it down. It could just be like usually when a little child is, being out acting out of order or yelling at the parent or whatever, sometimes it can mean like, hey, like, am I okay? Am I lovable? Like, show me attention in some way because something inside me tells me I'm not worthy. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder
mm,
if that part of that is to the players, like, because a lot of them come from these really bad backgrounds. So it could be that, I don't deserve this. Why do I keep, or it just could be the pain of playing sports every day,
that's
you
probably
know?
true of some people because they have a background which never prepared them for all of the, publicity, and you think in terms of sports, and you have this huge group of reporters who do nothing but interview prominent ball players and write stories about them, and they're all complimentary, and it seems as though this particular group is doing
Untouchable.
nothing but praising you,
Yeah.
and it goes to your head, and you begin to believe what you hear,
Mm.
and you can't stay focused.
Hmm.
You know,
Have you ever thought about getting famous yourself? Like, I remember one time I mentioned to you about, did you ever think about running for office? Because you love to talk about politics and all that. But did you ever think about that? Like,
never even gave it a thought, no. You need to have a certain amount of dedication, and you really need to put your heart and your mind into it, and I knew I would never do that. I was satisfied enough with what I had, and I didn't wanna mess around and, in effect, change careers.
mhm, right. So you never kind of
But
got
there
out.
are people who have, ambition, and it's fine,
Hmm.
and then they pursue it because they can do it.
Hmm. And also, you did mention about how, I don't know if I should bring this up, but how almost every successful politician, one way or another, sells themselves and kind of loses themselves in order to get that success and to get that, um, I don't know, fame or fortune or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think for many,
Hmm.
they just are willing to do too much in order to win re-election. An example of somebody who's just the opposite is Steve Lynch from Southie. He's been in office for many years, and he's never been a favorite of the establishment. He apparently is too conservative for the Democrats. And so when he thought he might like to run for senator years ago, they wouldn't support him.
Mm.
When recently he wanted to chair a committee, they wouldn't support him, because he's not their kind of Democrat.
He doesn't cross the line of
He
where they want
doesn't
him to
know.
be.
He knows what he believes. He knows what he thinks is right and wrong. He stays with it. Barry once met him.
Really?
Well, I guess I never told you
I
the
don't think so.
story.
I know the other story about the
I've
politician.
forgotten which store it was, up in the mall in Walpole
Mhm.
off of Route
Oh, yeah,
One.
the Walpole Mall, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I've forgotten which store it was in there, but anyhow, Mary was about to enter the store, and this gentleman was ahead of her, and he held the door for her.
Mm.
And somehow they got into a brief conversation, and he introduced himself and she introduced herself. Then they went their ways. And then, as they were about to exit the store, he happened to be there again. He held the door for her again, and he greeted her by name. And Mary came home. She was very impressed. Well,
Yeah.
I said to myself, this is what you do in Southie.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon.
Really? That
Yeah.
was the kind of the
At
culture
least in
inside.
my day, it wasn't all that uncommon.
Yeah. What do you think of how Southie's changed from, because I remember I showed you.
Yeah, Southie, I don't recognize today. I'm not saying it's bad.
Mhm.
It's just so different.
Mm.
And the advantage you have living in Southie today is you're so close to downtown. So it's actually, I used to walk to the bank. It was a brisk 35 minutes or so. It's good exercise, and I take the trolley home.
Mhm.
So it became attractive to people who didn't want a long commute. And then started driving up real estate prices. I don't know how anybody can afford to live in Southie today unless you have a fairly large income. Certainly the kind of people that I had as neighbors could never afford to buy a house or even to rent.
Mm. Now, you mentioned the walkability factor of Southie and how it was kind of close by and
Yeah.
everything. Um, please tell me the story about how your mom would give you, what was it, $1 every day? Or not every day, but during the summer, she would give you $1 and you would take the trolley and go to a certain ballpark.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
she wouldn't give me $1
Oh,
every day,
I
but
see.
if I had $1 and I wanted to go to a Red Sox game, the let's see now, the trolley fare was a dime each way. The bleacher tickets cost 50 cents. That left me with 30 cents remaining. I could buy a hot dog for 25 cents and still come home with a nickel. If you're sitting in the bleachers and you decided, gee, I'd like to be in the grandstand, it isn't that crowded. There was a turnstile you could go through and you paid 75 cents. And you could get a ticket to the upper portion of the bleachers of the grandstand, which then was called the unreserved grandstand. The unreserved was where you walk in, take any seat available. the reserve grandstand was just below, and the box seats were just below that.
Mm.
So we'd go in and the deal that we had, this was a great deal.
Mhm.
Jerry Mahoney's uncle was a sports writer, Joe Cashman. And Joe Cashman specialized in writing on baseball, and he was also the official scorer. And so Joe had access to extra tickets, and he'd leave a couple of tickets at the box office for Jerry and one or two friends. So we like to be friendly with Jerry. So you go to the ballpark and you could pick up these free tickets. Free except that in those days, there was still a carryover excise tax from World War II. So it was 50 cents. So you paid your 50 cents, got your ticket, and we had tickets to the unreserved grandstand. But after a couple of innings, and you'd see that there weren't that many people in the reserved, you could move down.
Yeah.
And as long as you didn't try to get too close to the front, ushers should leave you alone. After all, what the heck? I mean, there was plenty of seats.
Mm.
So we'd end up in the reserve grandstand for 50 cents.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I'd say so. Were you in the ballpark when Babe Ruth passed away? And did they announce it over the
Yeah.
loudspeaker? Wow, what was that like?
Trying to think whether it was Fenway Park or Braves Field. I can't recall. But anyhow, there was an announcement on the loudspeaker that Babe Ruth had died, and we had not a moment of silence. We had a minute of silence for the Babe.
Do you remember him at all? Or is
No,
it just
he's before my time.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He was kind of just a legend that people would talk about.
The only one from that era whom I ever saw was Lefty Grove.
You saw Lefty Grove?
Yeah. It was at the very, very tail end of his career. He won 300 games and could never win that 301st. He looked a little like Craig Kimbrell, except he had a little bit of a hunch, and when he threw, he didn't need to look in order to see, but he didn't stand up straight. He was bent just a little bit especially when he threw the ball. Yeah. So he had a kind of an unusual movement.
Wow. I guess wrapping up the interview.
Really?
Yeah.
We don't have 2 or 3 more hours.
We could if you'd like, we could go.
Meredith's going to wonder, well, if I got into an automobile accident. And of course, I can't communicate with her because I knew it was a cell phone.
Yeah. Oh well, she'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I guess last question I have for you is, what would you like hopefully not last, but the next few years of your life to look like?
I think I'd love it if my arthritis would ease up.
Mm-hmm.
I've had arthritis for 30 years. Sometimes, like now, it isn't bothering me very much. Other times it bothers me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating.
Oh.
Hands get stiff, knees ache. I mean, if I could be rid of that for a while, I'd be happy. I don't care about the cancer. If the cancer is going to kill me, it'll kill me.
Mm-hmm.
Mary and I were talking about that today, and I'm going to see a doctor with a second opinion, and they can treat it, and they can kill it. But if they're not careful, the treatment will also kill me, because then my immune system will continue to be jazzed up and it'll head right for my heart and do what it tried to do last time.
Mm.
So you have to fine-tune that. I think they'll find a way.
What about just in your life, like when you, not just medical, but when you look at the people around you, when you look at yourself, what would you like to happen in the next few years, do you think?
I'd like it to be safe enough for me to and for Mary to take another nice long cruise. We really enjoy cruising. But right now, can't go because my health situation hasn't stabilized. Probably we could risk it, but you don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
The
How long of a cruise were you thinking of taking?
uh, 3 weeks, I
3
think.
weeks.
I'd like 3 weeks, yeah.
Where would you like to go? You've been almost everywhere because you love cruises.
Yeah. Uh, I think the first choice would be cross the Pacific to Hawaii and then perhaps a few islands and then back.
Mm.
The second choice would be, uh, Alaska, including Denali. Denali I'd never been, and some, clients have told me that Denali is great, and they've been there more than once. And I think Mary is at the point where she wouldn't mind seeing animals. You know the way she is with animals. She's not crazy about, uh, but I think she'd enjoy it. I know she'd enjoy it. But I shouldn't say afraid to go, but reluctant to go because something could happen to me.
Right.
Well, we don't have a lot of time.
Mm. Wow. Speaking of time.
It's up.
Speaking of time.
This is
Oh,
this
boy.
has been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, it's been a ball for me. I hope the people listening will have a great time too. But yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on, and I want to have you back soon. I really want to have you back soon
Okay, so
because
if you're
there's,
going to have me back soon, I'll have to prepare my stories for next time.
yeah, please do.
I'll have to tell you why Lever Brothers moved to New York.
And many more. Okay. Thank you, Grandpa, so much.
Okay, thank you both. I don't know what your grandmother's going to say when she hears this. We'll find out soon.